Before we say a single word about this story, I want you to close your eyes for just 1 second and think about the hardest moment of your life. The moment when everything felt impossible. When you looked around and nobody was coming to save you. When you made a choice, maybe not the choice you wanted to make, but the only choice that made sense at the time. Now hold on to that feeling. Because the woman in today's story, she knows that feeling better than anyone. Welcome back to Tales by AM, the channel where we sit together, slow down, and let the old stories speak. If this is your first time here, welcome home. And if you've been with us for a while, thank you. Truly. Your presence here means everything. Today's story comes from the heart of Africa. From the red earth and the baobab trees, from a time when people believed that fate was never an accident, that every road, no matter how crooked, was leading somewhere. It is a story about a young woman named Amina. A woman who was beautiful. A woman who was poor. A woman who made choices that the world would judge her for. And a woman who, in the most unexpected moment of her life, came face to face with the person who had broken her before she even knew what breaking felt like. This is not a simple story. It is not a comfortable story. But I promise you, it is one you will carry with you long after the video ends. Stay with me. Amina grew up in a small village, the kind of village that outsiders might call simple, but the people who lived there called home. Red dirt roads wound between clay huts. Children chased each other through the dust. Old women sat under trees braiding hair and trading stories. And every morning, before the sun had fully decided to rise, the village came alive with the sounds of work. Amina was part of that rhythm. She had been part of it for as long as she could remember. But Amina was different from the other women in the village. Not because she was smarter, or kinder, or braver, though she was all of those things. She was different because of something she had been born with and could never escape. Her beauty. Her skin was dark and smooth, the kind that seemed to hold light inside it, like it was made from the same earth the village stood on. Her hair flowed long and black. When she walked, she moved with a quiet grace that made people turn their heads without even knowing why. She was the kind of woman that poets write about. The kind that painters try to capture and never quite get right. And none of it, not one drop of it, put food on our table. Because beauty is a gift that the world admires and rarely compensates. Every single morning, before the sky even knew what color it wanted to be, Amina was already up. Carrying heavy clay water pots from the well on her head, her neck straining under the weight. Walking to the farms. Working in the fields for anyone who would hire her. Washing the clothes of other families, scrubbing until her knuckles were raw and her back ached. She did whatever she could find. She took nothing for granted. She complained to no one. And still, she remained poor. There is something deeply cruel about that, isn't there? Working your hardest and watching it amount to almost nothing. Going to sleep tired and waking up poor. Repeating the cycle. Day after day after day. The men of the village noticed her, of course. They always noticed her. But noticing and caring are two very different things. Some of them would approach her with sweet words and soft promises, money for help, support for companionship, kindness in exchange for something they didn't deserve. And when Amina refused, or when she hoped for something real, they disappeared. They left her alone with the same empty hands she'd always had. She learned, over time, that most people see beauty as something to take, not something to protect. Some nights, she would sit outside her small clay hut at the edge of the village, the place no one else wanted to live, and she would stare up at the sky. At the thousands of stars that the African night poured out like scattered salt. She would ask them quietly, in the privacy of her own heart, why? Why is this my life? What did I do to deserve this? The stars never answered. but the hunger in her belly did. The afternoon that changed everything started like every other afternoon. Amina was at the river. She was on her knees at the bank, her hands plunged into the cold water, working her way through a pile of other people's laundry. The sun was beating down on the back of her neck. Sweat was mixing with river water. She walked without looking up, without rest, doing what she had always done. That's when she heard the sound of heels on the path behind her. She didn't look up at first. She had learned not to look up too quickly. Looking up too quickly in her experience only meant seeing something she couldn't have, or someone who wanted something she wasn't willing to give. But the footsteps stopped. And a voice said, "You work harder than most people in this village." Amina looked up. Standing there on the path, like something from a completely different world, was a woman unlike anyone Amina had ever seen up close. She wore fine fabric that moved in the breeze. Gold jewelry caught the afternoon light at her wrists, her ears, her neck. Her posture was the posture of someone who had never once in their life worried about where dinner was coming from. She was wealthy in a way that went beyond money. She was wealthy in confidence, in certainty, in the way she looked at the world and assumed it would arrange itself for her convenience. Her name was Madame Zai. Amina sat back on her heels and wiped her hands on her skirt. She looked up at this woman without envy, or at least, she tried not to show it. And she said, quietly, with the kind of tired wisdom that comes only from years of hard experience, "Yes. But hard work alone does not always change a poor person's life." There was silence between them for a moment. Madame Zay studied her, really looked at her, the way people rarely look at the poor, and something passed across her face. Calculation, perhaps, or recognition. Then she made her offer. She said she had work in the city. She said Amina would meet wealthy men at night. She said the pay was generous and the money would come in the morning, reliable as sunrise. She didn't say the word for what it was. She didn't need to. Amina understood. And now I need to stop here, because I know some of you watching this are already forming a judgment. And I want to ask you, gently, respectfully, to hold that judgment for just a little while longer. Because Amina was not naive. She was not weak. She was not reckless. She was a woman who had spent years being taken advantage of for free. Men had already used her beauty, her warmth, her desperation, and given nothing back. They had taken without asking. They had promised without keeping. They had left her with less than she started with. So when Amina sat beside that river for a long moment before answering, she wasn't making her choice lightly. She was calculating the cost of every option she had. And she realized, with a quiet and devastating clarity, that she had been paying without choosing for a long time already. So she said, if men are already using my beauty for nothing, then at least this time, I will not remain poor. And she accepted. The city was overwhelming at first. After a lifetime of a village, of red dirt roads and neighbors who knew your name and roosters waking you before dawn, the city was noise and light and speed and strangers. It was disorienting. It was intoxicating. It was everything Amina's life had never been. And the money came. Almost immediately, the money came. For the first time in her life, Amina held more in her hands than she had ever imagined. For the first time, she bought herself clothes, not because someone gave them to her, not out of charity, but because she earned them. She bought jewelry. She saved. She eventually moved into a real house near the market streets, a proper house with walls that didn't crack in the rain and a roof that didn't leak. And if you have ever been truly poor, I mean the kind of poor where you count every grain of rice, where you go to sleep rehearsing how you'll explain to your body why it's hungry again, then you understand what that first taste of financial security feels like. It feels like breathing. It feels like the first time you've ever actually been able to breathe. Amina breathed. But the nights were the price. Each night brought strangers to her door. Men who paid generously and left before the sun came up. Men who never asked her name, or if they did, never remembered it. Men who saw in her exactly what she feared everyone had always seen, not a person, not a woman with a story and a heartache and a past, but something to be used and returned to the shelf. The money grew. And alongside the money, so did the lifestyle that Amina built around herself like armor. She began visiting the nightclubs. Places where the music was loud enough to silence the thoughts she didn't want to have. Where the lights were bright enough that you couldn't really see anyone's face, not properly, and no one could see yours. She drank. She danced. She laughed loudly in the company of wealthy men who liked being seen with her. She was known in the city now. That was something. To go from invisible and poor to visible and sought after, that is its own kind of power, even when the power comes at a cost you don't like thinking about. But deep in her chest, in the quiet place beneath all the noise and the money and the motion, something ached. She didn't have a word for what was missing. But I think if she had tried to name it, she might have said, "I don't know who I belong to. I don't know if anyone in this world is mine, and I am theirs." Because wealth can feed you, but it cannot hold you. And Amina, for all her beauty and all her money, had never once in her life been truly held. He came on an ordinary evening. There was nothing about him that stood out. He was old. He was tired. He looked like a man who had been walking for a very long time and had grown used to the weight of his own footsteps. His clothes were worn thin. His hands were rough. His eyes, when you looked into them, had a particular kind of sadness that doesn't come from one bad day. It comes from years and years of carrying something heavy that you can never put down. He came to Amina's door like the others came. And she received him like she received the others. They sat together in the dim light of a candle, that warm, flickering orange light that makes everything look a little softer, a little more human than it does in the daytime. They talked a little. She moved. And in some quiet, unplanned moment, the old man's eyes fell on her back. And stopped. She heard his breath change. Felt something shift in the room. That mark. He whispered. Amina turned to look at him. His face had gone pale beneath the candlelight. His hands were trembling. He was staring at the dark birthmark on her back, the one she'd had her whole life, the one she never thought twice about, the one that was just part of her body the way a freckle is just part of a face. "I have seen that mark before," he said. His voice was shaking now, cracking at the edges like old pottery. Amina felt something she couldn't name moving through her. A cold feeling. A slow feeling. Like the world was turning just a little more slowly than it should. She asked, quietly, "Where have you seen it?" The old man could barely speak. "Many years ago," he said. "My daughter had the same mark." A candle flickered between them. Amina's voice was almost a whisper. "What was your daughter's name?" The old man lowered his head. And when he said the name, he said it like a man confessing a sin he has been carrying for decades. He said it like a man who has rehearsed this moment 10,000 times in his sleep and still isn't ready for it. He said, "Amina." The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. I want you to think about what this moment meant. Amina had spent her entire life without knowing who her family was. Without roots. Without the kind of belonging that most people don't even think about because they've always had it. She had been alone in the world since before she was old enough to understand what alone meant. She had built her life on top of an emptiness she had no name for, a hollow space in the center of her story where a beginning should have been. And now, in the most unexpected place, in the most painful place, the beginning had walked through her door. The old man wept. He didn't try to hold it back or be dignified about it. He wept the way people weep when they have been waiting to weep for a very, very long time. And through his tears, he told her the truth. When he was young, he said, he was desperately poor. The kind of poor that hollows out a man's soul and leaves him capable of things he never imagined. He had a child, a little daughter, and he could not feed her. He could not keep her. And in a moment of absolute desperation, he had made the worst decision of his life. He sold her. He sold his own daughter. For money. Because he didn't see another way. And then he spent the rest of his life walking, searching, carrying a guilt so heavy that it had bent him into the tired, worn-out old man who now sat crumpled before his daughter, begging without words for something he knew he didn't deserve. "I do not deserve your forgiveness," he said, "but I am deeply ashamed of what I did." Now here is where this story asks you to do something hard. Because it would be easy, completely understandable, for Amina to turn this man away. To say, "You made me who I am. You made me poor and alone. You put me in the arms of Madame Zoe. Every man who used me, every night I cried alone, every choice I made that I am not proud of, it traces back to you. You did this. Get out." Nobody would have blamed her. But Amina stood there in the candlelight for a long, long moment. And then she did something quietly extraordinary. She helped him to his feet. And she held him. "You made a terrible mistake," she said, gently. "But I see your regret. I forgive you." 2 words. 3 syllables. And a lifetime of pain, not erased, never erased, but finally given somewhere to rest. Amina brought her father to live with her. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he had a bed to sleep in and food to eat. He had a daughter who looked at him without hatred in her eyes. He had a reason to stay still instead of walking. And in the evenings, the two of them would sit together, this broken man and this extraordinary woman, and they would just be together. The way family is supposed to be. One evening, gently, the old man spoke to his daughter. He said, "My child, you have survived more than most people will ever know. You are strong. But the life you are living now, the nights, the strangers, the noise you surround yourself with, that is not a life that will bring peace to your heart. You know that. I think you have known it for a long time." He told her she deserved more than money. That she deserved respect, love, a real home, not just a house with walls, but a life with meaning. Amina listened. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. Because the truth is, she had been waiting for someone to say that to her. Not to judge her, she had been judged enough by people who understood nothing of what her life had been. But to see her, to look at her completely, all of her, every part of her story, and still say, "You deserve better than this." And so she chose. She stepped away from the nightlife, from the nightclubs and the drinking and the strange men and the life that had kept her fed but never full. She didn't do it because she was ashamed. She did it because she was ready. Because for the first time in her life, she had a reason beyond survival to build something different. Not long after, she met a man. He was not wealthy. He was not powerful. He was just honest, but the kind of honest that is rarer and more valuable than gold. He saw the courage it took for Amina to change her life, and he didn't flinch from her story. He sat with it. He respected it. He respected her. They became friends first. Then something more. They married. And Amina, who had started her life sold, who had grown up in poverty, who had made choices the world called shameful, who had forgiven the unforgivable, Amina finally came home. The people who heard Amina's story would later say, a person may lose their way for a time, but wisdom and forgiveness can always guide them back to the right path. But I think the lesson goes deeper than that. I think this story is about what happens when the world refuses to protect you. When poverty steals your choices before you're even old enough to make them. When beauty becomes a target. When the people who were supposed to keep you safe didn't. Amina didn't lose her way because she was weak. She found her way back because she was strong enough to forgive not just her father, but herself. And that is perhaps the hardest forgiveness of all. To look at the choices you made when you were desperate and alone, and to say, I understand that person. I do not hate her. She did what she had to do. And now I am ready to do something different. That takes more courage than most stories ever give their characters credit for. So if you are watching this today and you feel like you've lost your way, I want you to hear this: your past is not your prison. Your story is not over. And the most unexpected things, a father at your door, a mark on your back, a candle burning low, can change everything. Don't give up on your path home. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, please share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who's struggling. Someone who's made choices they are not proud of. Someone who needs to know that forgiveness is real and redemption is possible. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Tales by Am, hit that bell so you never miss a story. We come here to slow down together. To remember that the old stories, the ones told under African skies and around fires long before we were born, still have something to say to us. They still know our names. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I see you in the next one. This is Tales by Am. And the story continues.